Hello everybody, welcome to Asura Psych, and welcome to the battlefield. And today we're going to be talking about introversion and extroversion, some common misconceptions about these two traits, and a popular analogy used by MBTI practitioners to explain these traits called the general and his advisor. Let's get into it. So when people think of introversion and extroversion, the first thing that usually comes to mind is how social a person is. How likely they are to engage with other people. An extrovert is someone who's going to be outgoing and interacting with others a lot of the time, or an introvert is somebody who's going to be shut inside their house all the time and never wants to interact with other people. And this is actually not what the original meaning for introversion and extroversion were. How Jung defined introversion and extroversion were in what direction a person's primary energy is facing, in which way they focus as an individual. An extrovert focuses their energy outwards towards the external world. They are extroverted. Their energy is focused on literally anything around them at any given time. And that is where they like to be engaged in. Whereas the introvert looks within. They tend to be highly introspective. All of their energy, or their primary amount of energy, is focused inwards and on the self. And this differs between the two types because extroverted types are going to be more engaged with the immediate moment. They're going to be more engaged with the right now, the external world, where the introverted type is going to be more so concerned with the self and kind of processing their thoughts and feelings. This is where the analogy for the general and his advisor comes into play. So I'm going to ask you to imagine four things: a group of soldiers, a war tent, a general, and his advisor. The group of soldiers represents the external world, anything that is outside of the self. The war tent represents the self, who you are as an individual. The general is going to act as your primary way of engaging with the world. The advisor is going to act as your secondary way of engaging with the world, your non-preferred way. So, for the extroverted type, their general is going to be outside of the war tent, speaking with the soldiers, speaking with the outer world on most occasions. They're going to be, a lot of the times, directly engaging with the outer world, the primary process, the general is. And the advisor is going to occasionally come from within the war tent and hand advice or letters to the general to help him better engage with the outer world or with his soldiers. But this is the opposite for the introverted type. The introverted type has their general within the war tent, within the self. And they're going to occasionally write down letters to give to their advisor to send out to give to the soldiers. The advisor is the one that speaks with the outer world, while the general stays within the war tent and makes the plans. This is why it's a little bit more complicated to type or learn about introverted types, because a lot of the times they're presenting their secondary function. They're presenting their non-preferred way of engaging with the world. Take, for example, me as an individual, as an INTJ. I am right now engaging with you in an extroverted thinking sort of way. I'm presenting things that I've already finalized with introverted intuition. I've already thought this through. I've already processed it. You are seeing me in a very extroverted thinking format right now, but outside of video making, outside of times when I need to be presenting my thoughts, I am much more reclusive and introspective. I'm much more looking within. And that is very much how the general and the introvert analogy plays out on a grander scale. When you're speaking with introverts, it's very important that you recognize that you may not directly be speaking with their general, and it's going to be harder for people who are not very close or related to the introvert to kind of finally get in and speak with that general function. With the extroverted type, this tends to not so much be the case because they're very much what they appear to be a lot of the times. You don't have to worry about the extroverted type kind of hiding who they are because they're very much going to be engaged with the now, with their primary process. So all of this can be beneficial for the extroverted type because the extroverted type is the type to directly engage with the world. They tend to be people who learn by doing, and the extroverted type might attempt something 10 times and fail 10 times before the introvert has even given it one attempt. Because the introvert kind of typically wants to make sure that they know how something's going to go out because they don't want to present the internal self to the outer world unless they're sure that that's going to go out as they plan. They want to make sure that if they're going to present the true self to the outer world, that it's going to be a safe environment for them to do so in. And this can be beneficial to the introverted intuitive type because if they only have one chance to do something, they might much more think about how they're going to do that one thing than the extroverted type who typically prefers to learn through experience or learn by doing. Briggs referred to the extroverted types as afterthinkers, which doesn't mean that they think about something after they do it, essentially, but what it does imply is that they can't learn about life until they've lived it. They have to experience something before they can really begin to process what it means for them as an individual. Where for introverted types, they are forethinkers. They tend to not be able to live life until they truly understand what it is that they're going to be doing. They want to completely process an idea or experience internally before they even begin to really attempt it as an individual. Another way to view this would be that extroverted types tend to look at the world as shallow water. They're willing to plunge into new depths, even if they don't know exactly how deep they're going to be, because they view new situations and challenges as shallow water that can be easily tread. Whereas the introverted type tends to typically view new situations, new water, as inherently unknown or deep, as in they need to be extremely prepared for new situations or scenarios because they don't know exactly what's going to happen. And they want to be sure that they're not going to plunge into something that's going to be over their neck and over their experience level. By the very definition of it, extroverted types are far more engaged with the objective world of reality, things that are immediately present to them and everyone else around them, whereas introverted types are highly engaged with the world of subjectivity, the world of the self. Even primary ways of engaging with the world that you would assume would not be in the realm of subjectivity, such as introverted thinking, are actually highly subjective functions. Introverted thinking is a subjective function by its very nature because the ideas and logic come from within the self. Whether or not you're attempting to view things in an objective manner, if you are doing so from within the self in an internalized way, it is considered subjective through the Jungian Briggs model. And this is why it's important to know the difference between them. This isn't to say that extroverted types are completely objective, but they more so engage in a world that is clearly viewable and agreeable between every person involved in a given situation, whereas the introverted type has a very internalized and private way of processing things that can't as easily be shared with everyone else. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this short primer on introversion and extroversion and the analogy associated with it. I think it's really important for people to take note that introversion and extroversion aren't directly related to how social a person is and are more so focused on the energy direction and energy preferences of individuals. Because introverted and extroverted people can both be social, they can both be energetic in certain scenarios or conditions. It really just depends on how they prefer to engage with the world. And if they can tap into a situation that is directly related to their preferred way of engaging with the world, they're going to be energized or relaxed depending on who they are. And that's really just up to personal preference. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. This has been Asura at Asura Psych. Have a good one.